The vastness of space stretched endlessly, a canvas of shimmering stars and swirling nebulae. In the heart of this cosmic expanse floated an ancient generational ark, a colossal ship carved from dark metallic alloys that seemed to drink in the light around it. This was the home of the Vailith, a proud alien race whose civilization had once thrived, but now teetered on the edge of collapse. For centuries, they drifted through the void, searching for allies or resources to save their dying culture. On board the Ark, hidden among its labyrinthine corridors, Lyrae stood silently by a large observation window. Her slender frame was draped in flowing robes that shimmered faintly under the dim artificial lights. She wasn't like the others. Her golden eyes held a spark of curiosity that set her apart from the stoic expressions of her people. While most Vailith clung fiercely to their rigid traditions, Lyrae often found herself questioning them. Why must everyone conform? Why did individuality have to be suppressed? These thoughts haunted her, even as she tried to blend into the structured life aboard the ship. Today, however, something unusual had happened. The sensors had picked up a signal, a weak cry for help emanating from a damaged spacecraft adrift nearby. It belonged to no known species within the Vailith archives. When the rescue team retrieved the sole survivor, Lyrae felt drawn to him immediately. There was something about the being who lay unconscious on the medical slab, his human form so different from anything she'd ever seen before. His skin was pale yet warm, his features sharp but not unkind. And though he was injured, there was a quiet strength about him that intrigued her. Captain Elias Kane stirred slowly, his eyelids fluttering open as awareness returned. The first thing he noticed was the ceiling above him, an unfamiliar surface made of smooth, cold metal. Panic surged through him as memories flooded back. His ship caught in an asteroid storm, systems failing one by one, the desperate attempt to send out a distress call. Then nothing. He turned his head cautiously, taking in his surroundings. The room was stark and clinical, filled with strange instruments that hummed softly. And then he saw her. Lyrae knelt beside him, her hands clasped tightly together as if in prayer. Her golden eyes locked onto his with an intensity that startled him. Before he could speak, she lowered her head until her forehead touched the floor, a gesture of submission so profound it left him speechless. "Please," she said, her voice soft but firm, carrying a musical quality that resonated deep within him. "Let me serve you." Elias blinked, unsure whether he'd heard correctly. Serve him? What kind of beings were these aliens? He struggled to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his side. "Who are you?" he managed to ask, his tone wary but calm. "I am Lyrae," she replied, raising her head slightly to look at him again. "You are safe here. My people saved you." Her words offered little comfort. Saved him, or captured him. He glanced around the room again, searching for signs of hostility. But all he saw was Lyrae, kneeling before him with an expression that seemed reverent. "You don't need to kneel," Elias said finally, his voice gentler now. "I'm just grateful to be alive." Lyrae hesitated, then rose slowly to her feet. She studied him carefully, noting how his gaze flickered between caution and curiosity. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met," she admitted. "Among my people, serving others is considered lowly work. Yet when I saw you," she trailed off, unsure how to explain the strange pull she felt toward him. Elias frowned. "Why would you want to serve me? We don't even know each other." "It is not servitude," Lyrae said quickly, shaking her head. "It is respect. You survived where many would have perished. Your resilience, your courage, it inspires me." For a moment, Elias didn't respond. He simply stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. Was this some sort of trick, or was she genuinely sincere? Either way, he knew he couldn't let his guard down completely. Not yet. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally, his tone firmer this time. Lyrae's expression softened. "Only to learn," she said simply. "To understand what makes you so different. Perhaps through you, we can find hope for our own future. Hope. The word lingered in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Elias realized then that whatever fate awaited him here, it wouldn't be easy. But maybe, just maybe, it could also lead to something extraordinary. As Lyrae led him to a small chamber where he could rest, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that their meeting was no accident. Whether she intended it or not, Lyrae had already begun to change him. And perhaps in time, he might do the same for her. Far beyond the stars, two strangers from vastly different worlds had taken their first step toward understanding. Little did they know, their bond would soon ignite changes neither of them could have imagined. Days passed, and Elias found himself adapting to life aboard the alien Ark. The Vailith ship was a marvel of engineering, its corridors alive with soft hums and glowing panels that pulsed like a heartbeat. Yet for all its technological wonders, it felt cold and sterile, devoid of the warmth Elias associated with home. He couldn't help but contrast the harsh efficiency of the vessel with Lyrae's gentle demeanor. She was always nearby, attending to his needs with quiet dedication. At first, Elias had been uneasy about her insistence on serving him. It wasn't just her kneeling gestures or the way she addressed him. It was the sheer intensity of her focus. Every meal she brought seemed carefully prepared. Every question she asked carried an underlying curiosity. Slowly, however, he began to see beyond her formalities. Beneath the layers of protocol and tradition, Lyrae was someone searching for meaning, for connection, for something more than the rigid world she inhabited. One evening, as they sat together in a small chamber designated for Elias' recovery, Lyrae hesitated before speaking. "You are different from what I expected," she said softly, her golden eyes fixed on him. Elias raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And what exactly did you expect?" She tilted her head slightly, considering his question. "I thought humans would be aggressive, primitive. My people have studied your kind from afar, through intercepted transmissions. You fight among yourselves often. Your planet is chaotic." Elias chuckled, though there was a hint of sadness in his voice. "Yeah, we're not perfect. But chaos doesn't mean we lack value. Sometimes it's in the messiness that we find our strength." Lyrae frowned, clearly puzzled. Strength? How can disorder lead to strength? He leaned back against the wall, thinking carefully about how to explain. "Well, think of it this way. On Earth, no two places are exactly alike. People come from different backgrounds, speak different languages, believe in different things. That diversity makes us adaptable. We learn to work together, or at least try to, because survival depends on it." Her expression softened, and for a moment, she looked almost envious. "Adaptability," she murmured. "That is something my people lack. We cling to order because without it, we fear falling apart." Elias nodded slowly. He could sense the weight behind her words, the unspoken struggles of a society built on strict rules and unyielding hierarchies. "Tell me more about your people," he urged gently. Lyrae hesitated again, glancing toward the door as if worried someone might overhear. Then, lowering her voice, she began to share fragments of her world. She spoke of the Vailith's long history, their once glorious empire reduced to a wandering Ark. She described their caste system, where individuals were assigned roles based on birthright, leaving little room for personal choice. Those deemed unworthy were forced into servitude, treated as tools rather than sentient beings. "That's why serving you," she trailed off, looking down at her hands. "It should feel shameful, but instead it feels right. Serving you gives me purpose. You remind me that there is another way, a better way." Elias felt a pang of sympathy for her. Despite their differences, he understood what it meant to feel trapped by circumstance. As a captain, he'd faced countless challenges, both personal and professional. But unlike Lyrae, he'd always had the freedom to make choices, to shape his own destiny. "Lyrae," he said after a pause, "you don't need to serve me to prove your worth. You already have value, just by being who you are." Her eyes widened, surprise flickering across her face. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, not even her closest companions. Among the Vailith, worth was measured by contribution to the collective good. Individuality was seen as a flaw, not a virtue. Yet here was this human, telling her she mattered simply because she existed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Then Luray smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that transformed her entire presence. "Thank you, Elias," she said quietly. "I will remember your words." As the days turned into weeks, their bond deepened. Luray introduced Elias to various aspects of Vailith culture, explaining their rituals, art forms, and technology. In return, Elias shared stories of Earth, its landscapes, its people, its triumphs and failures. They discovered common ground in their mutual love for exploration, though their approaches differed greatly. Where the Vailith relied on precision and control, humans embraced uncertainty and creativity. But not everyone aboard the ship approved of their growing relationship. Rumors spread among the Vailith elite, who viewed Elias with suspicion. To them, he represented unpredictability, a threat to their carefully maintained order. Some whispered that Luray's fascination with him bordered on betrayal, while others argued that studying him could provide valuable insights for their survival. The tension came to a head one day when a high-ranking official named Kel confronted Luray in the corridor. Tall and imposing, with piercing silver eyes, Kel exuded authority. "You spend too much time with the outsider," he said sharply, his tone laced with disapproval. "He distracts you from your duties." Luray straightened, meeting his gaze without flinching. "My duty is to ensure his well-being," she replied evenly. "He is our guest, and I will honor that." Kel sneered. "A guest, or a potential adversary? Do not forget your place, Luray. Servants do not make decisions, they follow orders." Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Instead, she waited until he strode away before exhaling deeply. It was clear that her position was precarious, yet she refused to back down. When Elias learned of the encounter later, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Don't let them intimidate you," he said firmly. "You're stronger than they realize." Luray looked up at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Perhaps," she admitted, "but strength alone will not change their minds. If we want true progress, we must show them a better path." And so, amidst whispers of distrust and mounting pressure, the unlikely pair continued forging their connection. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, both knew they had embarked on a journey far greater than either of them could have anticipated. Together, they carried the seeds of hope, fragile yet resilient, waiting to take root in the barren soil of a dying civilization. As their bond deepened, Elias began to notice subtle changes in Luray. Her movements carried a newfound determination, and her golden eyes often held a distant look, as though she were contemplating something profound. He sensed that she was holding back, keeping secrets buried beneath the surface of her calm exterior. One evening, after weeks of cautious conversations and shared stories, Luray finally decided to confide in him. They were sitting in the same chamber where they had spent countless hours talking about their worlds. The dim glow of the ship's lighting cast soft shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere of quiet intimacy. Luray hesitated for a moment, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, before speaking. "Elias," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "there is something I must tell you. Something my people do not wish to admit, not even to themselves." Elias turned to face her, his brow furrowing with concern. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to reveal. "Our civilization, it is dying. Not just because we wander aimlessly through space, but because our leaders have corrupted the very foundation of who we are. They exploit those beneath them, using fear and control to maintain power. Servants like me are treated as tools, disposable and without worth. And those who question their authority disappear, silenced forever." Her words hung heavy in the air, each one carrying the weight of suppressed truths. Elias felt a chill run down his spine as he processed what she was saying. The Valeth's outward appearance of order and unity masked a darker reality, one of oppression and decay. And yet, Luray continued, her voice trembling slightly, no one dares to speak out. To challenge the council is to invite destruction. But serving you, it has made me realize that silence only perpetuates their lies. If I remain silent, I become complicit in their crimes. Elias reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're not alone anymore, Luray. Whatever you decide to do, I'll stand by you. Tears welled up in her eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. I chose to serve you not because I wanted to submit, but because I saw hope in you. Hope for change, for a future where my people can live free from tyranny. But exposing the truth will come at a cost. They will stop at nothing to protect their power. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The gravity of her confession settled over them like a heavy blanket. Then Elias leaned forward, his expression resolute. If we want to make a difference, we need proof. Evidence they can't deny. Do you know where we might find it? Luray nodded slowly. The archives. Deep within the ship, there is a restricted area where the council stores records of all transactions, communications, and decisions. If we could access those files, it would expose everything. Elias finished for her. Yes, Luray said, her voice steadying. But getting inside won't be easy. The archives are heavily guarded, and only authorized personnel are allowed entry. Even thinking about going there is dangerous. Elias smiled faintly, a spark of determination lighting up his features. Dangerous doesn't mean impossible. We'll figure it out, together. Over the next few days, they devised a plan. Luray used her position as a servant to gather information about patrol schedules and security protocols, while Elias studied the layout of the ship during his permitted walks. Though they worked separately to avoid suspicion, their shared goals strengthened their resolve. One night, under the cover of darkness, they put their plan into motion. Luray led Elias through a series of narrow maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main corridors where patrols roamed. The air grew colder as they descended deeper into the ship, the hum of machinery growing louder with each step. Finally, they'd reached a reinforced door marked with intricate symbols, a clear indication that they had arrived at their destination. This is it, Luray whispered, pulling a small device from her robes. It was a keycard of sorts, modified to bypass standard security measures. She inserted it into the panel beside the door, holding her breath as the system processed the override. A low beep signaled success, and the door slid open with a hiss. Inside, the archives stretched endlessly, rows upon rows of glowing data crystals lining the walls. Each crystal contained years' worth of information, meticulously cataloged and stored. Luray moved quickly, her fingers dancing over the controls as she searched for the specific files they needed. Elias kept watch near the entrance, his heart pounding with anticipation. Every sound outside the room seemed magnified. The distant echo of footsteps, the whir of ventilation systems. Time felt like it was slipping through their fingers. Finally, Luray let out a soft gasp. I found it, she exclaimed, clutching a small crystal in her hand. This contains evidence of resource mismanagement, forced labor assignments, and disappearances. It's enough to bring the council down. Before they could celebrate, however, the lights flickered ominously. A mechanical voice blared through the speakers. Unauthorized access detected. Security teams en route. Panic surged through them, but Luray reacted swiftly. We need to go. Now. Clutching the crystal tightly, she grabbed Elias' hand and pulled him toward the exit. Behind them, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously through the tunnels. As they raced against time, Elias realized that this was no longer just about uncovering the truth. It was about survival. Their escape would test their courage, their trust, and their ability to work together. But as they sprinted through the labyrinthine passages, one thing became clear. Whatever happened next, They were no longer two individuals fighting separate battles. They were allies bound by a shared mission and a hope for a better future. The sound of boots pounding against the metal floors echoed through the narrow corridors as Luray and Elias sprinted toward freedom. Their hearts raced in unison, each breath sharp and deliberate. Behind them, the security teams were closing in, methodical, relentless, and armed with technology far superior to anything Elias had ever encountered. Every corner they turned felt like a gamble, every shadow a potential trap. "We can't keep running forever," Elias shouted between gasps for air. His injured side throbbed painfully, but he forced himself to push forward. They couldn't afford to slow down. Not now. Luray glanced over her shoulder, her golden eyes wide with urgency. "We're almost there," she said firmly, gripping his hand tighter. Just a little further. Ahead of them lay a junction where three pathways diverged. Luray skidded to a halt, quickly scanning the area. She tapped a panel on the wall, and a holographic map flickered to life. A schematic of the ship's lower levels. Her fingers traced along one of the routes before she nodded decisively. "This way," she whispered, pulling Elias into the middle passage. It was darker here, the faint glow of emergency lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. The hum of machinery grew louder, drowning out the distant shouts of their pursuers. For a brief moment, it seemed they might actually lose them. But then, a piercing alarm blared overhead, followed by an automated voice. "Intruder alert. All personnel report to designated zones." Elias cursed under his breath. "They've locked down the ship. We won't make it back to your quarters without being caught." Luray hesitated, her mind racing. She knew the ship better than anyone, but even she couldn't navigate this labyrinth indefinitely. Then inspiration struck. "There's a maintenance bay nearby," she said urgently. "It's rarely used, and we can hide there until the search dies down. From there, we can find another route to safety." Without waiting for his response, she tugged him down another corridor, her movements swift and purposeful. Moments later, they slipped into the dimly lit maintenance bay, sealing the door behind them just as the sound of footsteps thundered past outside. Inside, the space was cramped and cluttered with tools and spare parts. Dust coated every surface, evidence that it hadn't been visited in years. Luray pressed herself against the wall, clutching the data crystal tightly to her chest. Elias leaned against a workbench, trying to steady his breathing. For several tense minutes, they remained silent, listening intently for any sign of danger. When the noise outside finally faded, Luray exhaled softly. "That was too close," she murmured. Elias nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "We got lucky this time, but what happens when they realize we're still on board? They'll tear this ship apart looking for us." Luray's expression hardened. "Then we'll have to act faster. Once we get these files to the rebels, we can broadcast the truth to everyone. It's our only chance." "The rebels?" Elias asked, raising an eyebrow. "You didn't mention them before." She hesitated, guilt flickering across her face. I wasn't sure if I could trust you completely. But after tonight, after everything we've done together, I know I can. There are others like me, Valith, who see the corruption and want change. They've been working in secret, gathering support. With this evidence, we can rally them, and maybe even some of the Council's loyalists, to rise up." Elias studied her carefully, seeing the determination burning in her eyes. He realized then how much courage it must have taken for her to share this part of her world with him. "All right," he said finally. "Tell me what we need to do next." Luray explained their plan. They would use the maintenance tunnels to reach a secluded communications hub located near the ship's core. From there, they could transmit the contents of the data crystal directly to the entire Ark, ensuring no one could suppress the truth. It was risky. The hub was heavily guarded, but it was also their best shot at exposing the Council's crimes. As they prepared to move again, Luray handed Elias a small device. "Take this," she instructed. "It's a disruptor. If we encounter guards, it'll disable their weapons temporarily. Use it wisely. We only have one charge left. Elias accepted the gadget, nodding grimly. Got it. Let's go. Their journey to the communications hub was fraught with peril. Twice, they narrowly avoided patrols by ducking into alcoves or hiding behind crates. Each close call left them more shaken, but also more determined. Along the way, Lyrae shared snippets of her conversations with the rebels, describing their hopes and fears. Elias listened intently, offering words of encouragement whenever her resolve wavered. Finally, they'd reached the entrance to the hub, a massive reinforced door flanked by two Vaylith guards. Lyrae signaled for Elias to stay hidden while she approached cautiously. To his surprise, she didn't try to sneak past them. Instead, she addressed them boldly. "You serve the council blindly," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. "But do you truly believe they care about your well-being? Open this door and let us show you the truth, or continue aiding their lies and share in their guilt." The guards exchanged uncertain glances, clearly torn. One of them hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Do what you must," he muttered, stepping aside. Lyrae wasted no time, swiping her modified keycard to unlock the door. Inside, the hub was a maze of control panels and monitors, humming with activity. She moved swiftly to the main console, inserting the data crystal and initiating the transmission process. As the files began uploading, alarms blared once more. The council had discovered their location. "They're coming," Elias warned, peering through the doorway. Lyrae worked feverishly, her hands flying over the controls. "Almost done," she breathed. Then, the doors burst open, and a squad of enforcers stormed in, weapons drawn. Elias stepped forward, holding up the disruptor. "Stay back," he commanded, activating the device. A pulse of energy surged outward, disabling the guards' weapons and giving them precious seconds to act. With a final keystroke, Lyrae completed the upload. The screens around them lit up, displaying damning evidence of the council's corruption for all to see. Gasps and murmurs erupted throughout the ship as the truth spread like wildfire. The enforcers froze, stunned by the revelations unfolding before their eyes. In that moment of chaos, Lyrae turned to Elias, her expression both triumphant and fearful. "It's done," she said softly. "Now the real fight begins." Together, they braced themselves for whatever came next, knowing they had ignited a spark that could either save or destroy the Vaylith civilization. The transmission rippled through the Vaylith arc like a shockwave, shattering centuries of carefully maintained illusions. On every screen, in every chamber, and across every communication channel, the evidence of the council's corruption played out in stark detail. Financial records exposed embezzlement on a massive scale. Logs revealed forced labor assignments that had broken countless lives. And most damning of all were the lists of names, Vaylith citizens who had vanished without explanation, their fates erased from official records, but not forgotten by those who loved them. For many aboard the ship, it was too much to process. Some collapsed into despair, overwhelmed by the betrayal they had endured for generations. Others erupted in anger, shouting curses at the council members whose faces now flashed on the screens alongside their crimes. But amidst the chaos, there were also murmurs of hope, a belief that change might finally be possible. Lyrae and Elias stood side by side in the communications hub, watching as the reaction spread throughout the ship. The enforcers who had stormed the room moments earlier now hesitated, their loyalty shaken. One by one, they lowered their weapons, unsure whether to obey orders or join the growing tide of dissent. "We did it," Lyrae whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and disbelief. "They know the truth now." Elias nodded, though his expression remained cautious. "This is just the beginning. The council won't give up power easily. They'll fight back, and when they do, we need to be ready." As if on cue, a loudspeaker crackled to life, broadcasting the cold, commanding voice of Council Leader Kale. "Citizens of the Vaylith," he began, his tone dripping with authority. "What you have witnessed is nothing more than propaganda. an attempt by outsiders to destabilize our society. Do not be swayed by these lies. Order will prevail." The message ended abruptly, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Lorraine clenched her fists, fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. "He's trying to spin this," she said bitterly, "to make us look like traitors." "Let him try," Elias replied firmly. "The people aren't stupid. Once they see the proof, they'll make their own decisions." And indeed, the response came swiftly. In the lower levels of the Ark, where servants and laborers lived in cramped quarters, unrest boiled over into open rebellion. Groups of Valeth gathered in common areas, demanding answers and justice. Leaders among the rebels emerged, rallying their fellow citizens with fiery speeches. Among them was Tarek, a burly mechanic who had long resented the council's exploitation of his work. He addressed the crowd with passion, urging them to rise up and reclaim their dignity. "Our ancestors built this ship, not the council," Tarek declared, his voice echoing through the corridors. "It belongs to all of us, not just a handful of tyrants. Today, we take back what is ours." Cheers erupted, and soon, makeshift banners bearing symbols of unity and resistance appeared throughout the ship. The once orderly halls became battlegrounds as rebels clashed with loyalist forces. Yet even among the chaos, there was a sense of purpose, a shared determination to dismantle the corrupt system that had ruled their lives for so long. Back in the communications hub, Lorraine and Elias received word from the rebels, inviting them to join the uprising. "They're calling you a hero," Elias told her gently. "You've inspired them to stand up for themselves." Lorraine shook her head, her golden eyes filled with humility. "I didn't do this alone. It's because of you, the hope you brought, that they found the courage to act." Elias smiled faintly, touched by her words. "Then let's finish what we started together." Before they could leave, however, the door to the hub slid open, revealing a group of armed enforcers led by none other than Kale himself. His silver eyes gleamed with barely contained rage as he stepped forward, flanked by his subordinates. "Lorraine," he snarled, his voice laced with venom. "You dare betray your own kind. You shame us all with your weakness." Lorraine straightened, meeting his gaze without flinching. "No, Kale. I shame no one. It is you who dishonor our people with your greed and cruelty. Your time is over." Kale sneered, raising a hand to signal his guards. "Take her and eliminate the human." Chaos erupted as the enforcers charged forward. Elias acted quickly, using the disruptor to disable several weapons before tossing it aside. It was out of power now. Lorraine fought with surprising skill, dodging blows and striking strategically to disarm her opponents. Together, they managed to hold their ground, but the odds were against them. Just as Kale moved to intervene personally, a deafening roar echoed through the corridor. A wave of rebels surged into the room, overwhelming the enforcers and forcing Kale to retreat. Tarek stepped forward, offering Lorraine a respectful nod. "We came as soon as we heard. Are you all right?" She nodded, breathing heavily. "Thank you, Tarek. We couldn't have done this without you." Elias surveyed the scene, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and anxiety. The rebellion had gained momentum, but the battle was far from over. Kale and his loyalists still controlled key sections of the ship, including the central command center. Taking it would require careful planning and significant sacrifice. "We need to strike at the heart of their power," Lorraine said firmly, turning to address the gathered rebels. "If we can seize the command center, we can shut down their ability to coordinate. Without leadership, their forces will crumble." Tarek nodded in agreement. "We'll gather reinforcements and prepare for the assault. But it won't be easy. They'll defend it fiercely." "I know," Lorraine replied, her voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. "But if we want freedom, we must risk everything." As the rebels dispersed to prepare for the final push, Elias pulled Lorraine aside. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. "Once we commit, there's no turning back." She looked at him, her expression resolute. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about giving my people a chance to live free. Whatever happens next, I'm ready." Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then let's end this together." With renewed determination, they joined the others, preparing for the climactic showdown that would decide the fate of the Violet civilization. The road ahead was perilous, but one thing was certain. The spark of rebellion had ignited a fire that could not be extinguished. The final assault on the Central Command Center began under the cover of darkness, with the rebels moving in waves through the ship's labyrinthine corridors. Armed with makeshift weapons and fueled by a shared sense of purpose, they advanced with quiet determination. The air was thick with tension, every step bringing them closer to the heart of the Council's power, and to an uncertain fate. Luray led the charge alongside Tarek, her golden eyes blazing with resolve. She had volunteered to confront Cal directly, knowing it would require immense courage, and possibly her life. Though Elias had argued against it, insisting he should go instead, Luray refused to back down. "This is my fight," she had told him firmly. "My people deserve to see one of their own stand against the corruption that has ruled us for so long. If I can inspire even a fraction of them to believe in change, then my sacrifice will be worth it." Elias relented, but not without making her promise to stay safe. "We've come too far for you to throw everything away now," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Promise me you'll come back alive." "I'll try," she replied softly, though they both knew promises made in war were fragile things. As they neared the command center, the resistance intensified. Enforcers loyal to the Council barricaded themselves behind reinforced doors, firing energy blasts that forced the rebels to take cover. Smoke filled the air as explosions rocked the hallway, shaking the very foundations of the Ark. Yet despite the chaos, the rebels pressed on, their numbers bolstered by ordinary citizens who had joined the cause along the way. Finally, they reached the entrance to the command center, a massive vault-like door guarded by a contingent of elite enforcers. Tarek signaled for his team to hold position, while Luray stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Kale," she called out, her voice echoing through the corridor. "Face me. You claim to lead our people, yet you hide behind your soldiers like a coward. Come out and answer for your crimes." For a moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, the door slid open, revealing Kale flanked by his most trusted enforcers. His silver eyes glinted with malice as he regarded Luray with disdain. "You dare challenge me?" He spat, his tone dripping with contempt. "You, a lowly servant. You have no place questioning my authority." "I question nothing," Luray shot back, her voice steady despite the danger surrounding her. "I simply expose the truth. Your greed has destroyed our people, our culture. We are dying because of you, but it doesn't have to end this way. Surrender now, and we can rebuild together." Kale laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and hollow. "Rebuild? With filth like you? Never. If you think these rebels will succeed, you underestimate the strength of order. Without it, we are nothing." Before Luray could respond, Elias appeared at her side, his presence drawing gasps from the crowd. He held up a small device, the disruptor they had used earlier, and activated its last remaining charge. A pulse of energy surged outward, disabling the enforcers' weapons and creating an opening for the rebels to storm the command center. Chaos erupted as the two sides clashed, shouts and cries filling the confined space. Amidst the fray, Luray locked eyes with Kale, who stood frozen in shock. Seizing the opportunity, she lunged forward, disarming him with a swift motion. The other enforcers hesitated, unsure whether to intervene as their leader fell to his knees before her. "It's over, Kale," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "Your reign of fear ends here." Kale sneered, refusing to yield. "Kill me if you must, but know this. My death will not erase centuries of tradition. My vision kept us alive when others would have perished. Without me, you are lost." Luray shook her head, sorrow flickering across her face. "Your vision enslaved us. It's time for something new, for hope, not tyranny. With that, she signaled to Tarek, who quickly secured Kale and escorted him away. The remaining loyalists surrendered, realizing the battle was lost. As news of Cal's capture spread throughout the ship, cheers erupted from the rebels and their supporters. The Council's grip on power had been shattered, but victory came at a cost. In the final moments of the fight, Lirai had taken a direct hit from an energy blast meant for Elias. Though the wound wasn't fatal, it left her weakened and bleeding. Elias rushed to her side, cradling her gently as medics arrived to tend to her injuries. "You didn't have to do that," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "Why did you risk yourself for me?" Lirai managed a faint smile, reaching up to touch his cheek. "Because you taught me what it means to fight for something greater than myself. You gave me hope, and now I pass that hope on to my people." As the medical team worked to stabilize her, Elias watched silently, overwhelmed by gratitude and guilt. Lirai's bravery had saved countless lives, including his own. Yet, as he looked around at the faces of the rebels, exhausted but triumphant, he realized that her sacrifice had ignited a spark that could never be extinguished. In the days that followed, the Valith began rebuilding their society. Freed from the Council's oppression, they embraced values of equality and cooperation, inspired by the bond between Lirai and Elias. Though the road ahead would be challenging, they faced it with newfound unity and purpose. And as Lirai recovered, she turned to Elias with a hopeful smile. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "Together, we can build a future worth believing in." Elias nodded, taking her hand in his. Together, they had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, united by the unbreakable bond they had forged across worlds. Weeks passed, and the Valith Ark slowly transformed into a place unrecognizable from its former self. Gone were the rigid hierarchies and oppressive systems that had defined their society for centuries. In their place emerged a new order, one built on principles of equality, collaboration, and mutual respect. The rebels who had once hidden in shadows now stood proudly as leaders, guiding their people toward a brighter future. Tarek became a prominent figure among them, using his mechanical expertise to repair neglected systems and improve living conditions for all aboard. Lirai, though still recovering from her injuries, played an integral role in shaping this new era. Her bravery during the rebellion had earned her widespread admiration, and many looked to her as a symbol of resilience and change. Yet, she remained humble, insisting that true progress came not from any single individual, but from the collective efforts of everyone working together. Elias watched it all unfold with a mixture of pride and bittersweet reflection. He had never imagined that his arrival, accidental as it was, would spark such profound transformation. But he knew his time aboard the Ark was coming to an end. His damaged spacecraft had been repaired by the Valith engineers, thanks to advanced technology far beyond human capabilities. It was ready to carry him back home, to Earth, where his crew awaited news of his survival. On the eve of his departure, Lirai joined him in the observation chamber where they had first spoken weeks earlier. The vast expanse of stars stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of the infinite possibilities beyond their small corner of the universe. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply stood side by side, savoring the quiet connection they shared. Finally, Lirai broke the silence. "Will you tell your people about us?" she asked softly, her golden eyes reflecting the glow of distant suns. Elias nodded without hesitation. "Of course. I'll tell them about your courage, your strength, and the hope you've given your people. And I'll make sure they understand that peace between our species is possible, if we choose to embrace it." A faint smile touched her lips, though there was sadness behind it. "I wish I could see Earth someday," she admitted wistfully. "To walk beneath its open skies, to meet those who inspired you. It sounds beautiful." "It is," Elias replied, his voice tinged with longing. "But maybe one day, when your Ark finds stable ground again, or when humanity ventures further into space, You'll get the chance. Until then." He paused, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small object wrapped in cloth. "I want you to have this." Unwrapping the cloth revealed a delicate silver pendant, shaped like a star. "It's a piece of my world," he explained. "Something to remind you that even across galaxies, we're connected. No matter how far apart we may be, what we've done here will always matter." Tears welled up in Lorraine's eyes as she accepted the gift, clutching it tightly to her chest. "Thank you, Elias. This means more to me than words can say." The following morning, the entire Ark gathered to bid Elias farewell. Citizens lined the corridors, cheering and waving as he made his way to the hangar bay. Children pressed their hands against the glass walls, marveling at the sight of the human captain who had ignited such monumental change. Among them stood Lorraine, her presence commanding yet gentle, watching silently as Elias prepared to board his ship. Before stepping inside, he turned to face her one last time. "Take care of yourself, Lorraine," he said, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling within him. "Keep fighting for what you believe in, and remember, you're never alone."